Hey everybody, it's Dr. Kalanicky. So today we're going to do a lesson called Choosing a Measure of Center. And yesterday we spoke about mean, median, and mode, and those are measures of center when we talk about data. So if you haven't done so already, pause the video and complete the warm-up, which is round to the nearest tenth if necessary, using the following numbers to calculate the mean, the median, and the mode. Make sure you're showing work in the boxes. Okay, if you unpaused it means you're ready to go over these. So mean first. You're going to add up all of the numbers. Now since I have the room, I am going to write them all out. Make sure I have all the numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm going to get out my handy dandy calculator and I'm going to start adding them. Being really careful when I type them in. Looking at the monitor to make sure that I got them all typed in correctly. And I add them up and I get 536. Now I've done this enough times where sometimes I like to do it one more time just to make sure that I got the right number. I would especially do this on like a test or a quiz. Cool, I got the same number. All right, and then when I'm done, I take 536, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and I divide it by 7. Oops, sorry, I'm doing it on the side without you. Oof, and I get a little bit of a crazy answer, but that's okay. Might have expected that because it says round to the nearest tenth. So if I round that, final answer would be 76.6. Okay, so again, mean, adding up all the numbers and dividing by how many numbers you have. Now median. First step I have to do is put the numbers in order, because remember median means middle number. Mean was E-R-A-G-E, average. And mode is most. So median, I gotta put them in order. I like to be really careful when I do this, doing one number at a time. Taking my time, because what happens if I don't take my time and I rush is I will miss a number, and that's not good. 84, 87, and then 98. So I got them all. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Cool. Now I start crossing out. 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, and there's one left in the middle. So 75 is my median. And finally, my mode. What's the number that is happening the most? I actually really like looking at this list because then you can really see which ones are the most. And in this case, it's also 75. There's two 75s. All right. Again, a little bit of a review from yesterday, so hope that was helpful. Today we're going to take it one step further. We're going to talk about mean, median, and mode and when to use them, because we can find them every time, mean, median, and mode. But there's sometimes when we look at data when one is more meaningful than the other. And this is something we talked about a little bit yesterday too, an outlier. An outlier in data is a number that is much higher or much lower than most of the data. So here's a little quick briefing on when to use which measure of center. And you're going to use this chart today to really talk about which measurement of center you're going to need. When to use. So I'm going to use mean. It's best used if the data has no outliers. So there's no number that is really large or really small compared to the rest of the data. That's when I would use the mean. Because what does that involve? It involves every number. All the numbers get added up together and all the numbers get divided by one number. When do I use the median? Median is best used if there is an outlier. Why? Well, an outlier, if I have my list of data here, let's say, I don't know, and then like all of a sudden I have like a number like 20, which is clearly much higher than all the rest of these numbers. The first thing I'm going to do after I put my numbers in order for median is I'm going to cross out the largest and smallest number. So you notice how a median is a better representation of this data as opposed to something like a mean. If I added that 20 in, my average would be much higher. And then finally, mode. It's best used when the data consists of identical values more than half the time. So for example, if I have a test, and let's say a whole bunch of kids get an 85. It's pretty obvious to see that an 85 would be the best measure of center for this data, because there's a lot of 85s here. Okay, and I'm actually give you an example for mean as well. So make sure you add the examples in that I'm doing right here. Right, so by doing the median, I will be able to cross out the upper and lower extremes. Mode is best when more than half of the numbers are the same. And mean is great when all the numbers are pretty much close together. Right? Nothing too crazy there. All those numbers are pretty close together. There's no outliers. So let's do an example. I didn't calculate these right now, but I just did them for you guys to see after you can calculate them. A random group of students were asked how many shoes they have at home. And here's the data. And if you look at our three measures of center, we have a mean, a median, and a mode. So the first thing I'm looking at is, and I'm going to ask myself, is there an outlier? Is there a number in this data set that is much bigger or much smaller than all the rest of them? And there definitely is. If you didn't notice, we could also put them in order. Very obvious then that 50 is an outlier. So now, let's get to the summary statement. What can I say now about this data based on what I know about the mean, the median, and the mode? So I'm going to say in this data set, now I have to decide, since there is an outlier, which measure of center should I use? Well, let's see, there is a mode, right? 15 is mode, but is 15 more than half of the numbers that are in the set? I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 numbers, and my mode has 3 numbers, so that is exactly half, but I want more than half. So if it had 4 15s, then I would pick mode, but I don't. So if there's an outlier and there's not a mode, we're going to use median. So in this data set, the median would be the best measure of center because there is an outlier. And then I'm going to do one more. Since we decided to pick median as our best measure of center, I can now make a statement about this situation using the median 15. So reread one more time. A random group of students were asked how many shoes they have at home. So overall, most students have about 15 pairs of shoes at home. Again, taking out that outlier, notice that my average, because that outlier was in there, the average was actually much higher. Okay, make sure you have all that copied down, and we're going to flip over to the back. All right, another practice problem. You definitely are going to want to do this with your partner. I'm going to draw my little stick figures. You guys are working on it together. So take a moment and do that. Pause the video. The question says, a veterinarian weighs 4 cats. The tan cat weighed 13 pounds, the black cat weighed 11 pounds, the orange cat weighed 19.5 pounds, and the calico cat weighed 12.2 pounds. Which measure of center best describes the weight of the cats? Explain using a summary statement. So again, you're going to want to look at the values, and based on what we talked about, and you can flip over to the other side of the paper, do I use the mean, the median, and the mode? I want you to find the value that you decided. So if you decide the average or the mean is the best, then I want you to calculate the mean, and then I want you to explain using the summary statement, kind of like what we did on the other side. Explain why you picked that measure of center, and then explain what that measure of center means. So pause the video and try this with a partner. Okay, if you're back, we're ready to go over it. So based on the weights of the cats, and again, I like to kind of put them in order. It seems like there might be an outlier because these are pretty close together and 19 seems much, much bigger. So I'm going to decide based on this outlier that since I think 19.5 is an outlier, I think the best measure of center is median. So now I can calculate that. So I have my numbers in order. I'm going to cross out, but then I only have 2 numbers left over, so I like to circle those. And then to find the middle of those 2 numbers, I have to add them up and divide by 2. Now, if you said, and you and your partner decided, well, 19 is not really that much bigger, than, you know, the other values, then maybe you might have said mean, and that's okay, as long as you said, I don't believe there are any outliers. So now that I have my median, I can say, most of the cats weighed about 12.6 pounds. Again, explaining overall the data based on the best measure of center. Okay, so now we're going to kind of pull out the worksheet we did yesterday, which is this guy right here, which has 5 different sets of data on it, and we calculated the mean, the median, and the mode for all of them. Actually, I didn't finish all of these, but based on the data now, I want you to look at the data, decide the best measure of center, and write a summary statement. And again, we don't have really good situations with these numbers, but you can say, you know, overall, you know, most of the numbers were about, and that's it. So pause the video. When you're ready to go over it, we will go over it. You're going to do this independently. Okay, so if you're back, you're ready to rock and roll. So let's look at the sets of data. Pull out my set. Here's set number 1. I have my data over here. Again, I'm asking myself, the major question is there an outlier? And in this particular set of data, I don't really see a number that's really, really low or really, really high. So I'm going to say there's no outlier for this one. And since there's no outlier, that the mean would be the best measure of center. And what I didn't do from yesterday was I did not add these up. So I'm going to add those up right now and divide by 8. And so my mean, again, rounded to the nearest tenths place. There we go. So because there's no outlier, my mean would be my best representation or my best measure of center. So for set 1, since there is no outlier, the best measure of center is the mean. So overall, most of the numbers were around 50.9. And again, if you needed to see an example, that's great. If now you can do the rest of the problems. I don't know why number 5 got cut off, but you can definitely put number 5 down here. Sorry, guys. Hopefully it wasn't cut off on your sheet, but I don't remember. So add number 5 if you need to down here. So again, try 2, 3, 4, and 5 and come back when you're ready to go over it. Okay, we're back. Number 2. You could kind of go both ways. I'm looking at the data here and looking and saying 62 seems pretty high compared to the rest of the numbers because the rest of them are pretty close. But I guess it would be up to your judgment to decide if a 62 is significantly bigger than the rest of them. And if I look at the mean and the median and the mode, they're all pretty close together. So I added those up and I divided by 7 and I got 52. So looking at the answers, I would say there's probably not an outlier. But if you said that 62 was an outlier, that would be okay also. Okay, based on my mean. Moving on to the next batch. Again, make sure you copy this down. Make sure you have tried this on your own. Okay, next batch, number 3. Again, looking at the data set here, doesn't really seem like any of the numbers are too high or too low. But maybe you think 5 is too low, but 5 is pretty close to 8. So I would say there's probably no outlier here either. So again, since there is no outlier, the best measure of center is the mean. So overall, most of the numbers are around 10.8. If you calculated your mean correctly and rounded yesterday, it was 10.83 repeating. All right, looking at set of data number 4 here, and then I think it looks better if I look at it in order here. There's a clear outlier, clearly. 21 is significantly bigger than the rest of them. So since there is an outlier, and you could say of 21, the median would be the best measure of center. Again, I did look at the mode. I didn't talk about it. I was thinking about it in my head. I was thinking about a mode because there is a mode of 6, but there's only 2 6s, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 numbers in the data set. So it's not more than half. So since there is an outlier of 21, the median would be the best measure of center. Overall, most numbers are around 5.5. Let's see, what did I get as the mean yesterday? Divided by 6. Yeah, look at that. So you see how the mean is higher than the median and the mode, and that's because that 21, as we like to say in class, you're bringing the average up. So if you have a really high score, it'll bring your average up. If you have a really low score, it'll bring your average down. So think about that. That's why we want to take the outlier out of the situation and just use the median. We want to cut it right off, right? That's the first step we do when we find the median. And the last set of data, I have 16, 28, 30, 30, 31. Again, I would consider 16 an outlier. 16 seems pretty low. So again, since there is an outlier, I think it's 16, the median would be the best measure of center. So I'm going to look at my median again. If you look at your average, calculating it right now, notice the mean is 27. So the median and the mode are 30 because the 16 brought the average down. Okay, so since there is an outlier of 16, the median would be the best measure of center. Overall, most numbers are around 30. Fabulous. All right, so right now what you should be working on is going to Deck Toys. There is a lesson 10.4 activity for you to do. It's a quizzes on measures of center, choosing the best measure of center. If you're done with that, there's also some IXLs, CC1 and CC2. So if you need something else to do, that's fine. Just a reminder that yesterday, our step 1 of our project was due. And on Tuesday, so today's Friday, right? Should be, I hope so. On Tuesday, which is April 9th, your step 2 is due, which means you need to collect your data about your specific approved question. So make sure you do that. Make sure you have the packet and you have that data sheet ready to collect your data. If you need extras, there will be extras in the packet with the sub. So thank you guys so much. I hope you have a great day, and I will see you soon.